Yes. Person. Like Al Bridges Journal. I wouldn't be ready about this week. Hey, hey, back. No, it's okay. There's people online. Feel free to grab a seat. Welcome back. Your bag then? No? All right, we're just going to test audio one more time, making sure everyone can hear on both Teams and YouTube. I believe we have some thumbs up from Teams. We're testing YouTube right now. Test 1, 2. Continuing the test, making sure everyone can hear on YouTube. We lost her. Right, I think we're good on audio, so we're ready to get this meeting started here any second. Taylor, are we ready to go? All right. Thank you everyone for joining again for our second of two public meetings regarding the January 2026 service reductions. My name is AJ Nee. I'm the Director of Planning and Scheduling. Just a reminder, this meeting is broadcast online and in person. And the material tonight will be the same as the previous meeting, so feel free to stay or go if you've heard the information already. We're going to begin with a statement from our Executive Director, Owen.
Okay. Thank you, AJ. Thank you for participating in Lance's public meeting tonight. To provide some background to the changes being presented at this meeting, after new transit funding legislation did not pass this year, Lantha submitted a request to PennDOT for stabilization funding that would provide gap funding over a 2-year period. This is similar to the solutions that have been approved for SEPTA and Pittsburgh Regional Transit. We have been in discussions with PennDOT about this funding, but have not received an official response yet. However, based on those discussions, we have delayed any decision on moving forward with a large-scale service reduction, which had been under consideration for January and would have been necessary if we were not going to receive any new funding. This would have included a reduction of 25% in January and another significant service cut later in 2026. We are optimistic that we will not need to make those significant cuts, and instead, we are moving forward with a 2-year stabilization plan that includes the smaller scale service adjustments to be presented tonight. The January 2026 changes, which represent a reduction of approximately 5%, are a part of that plan. We feel it is necessary to move forward with that plan because regardless of whether or not we receive 2-year stabilization funds from PennDOT, we need to implement some level of service reductions. First, because any stabilization funding we receive will be short-term funding, and we really do not know what, if any, enhanced funding will be coming after that. Also, we feel it is necessary to begin to adjust our service to a level that can be maintained, given what we feel is a feasible level of funding going forward. And thank you again for participating in tonight's meeting, and I'm going to turn it back over to AJ.
Right. Thank you, Owen, and thank you again for all your hard work to make sure this is as stable as possible. So just some information on this open house hearing. In order to increase access to the public information, this meeting is being held in person at Atlanta Rider Resources Center, 60 West Broad Street in Bethlehem, as well as virtually online in Teams and YouTube Live. This location is adjacent to the second largest transit hub in the region with high frequency service and is ADA compliant. To provide additional access to this meeting, it will be recorded and published on our social media platforms for those who aren't able to attend. Microphones are muted throughout this meeting to avoid any confusion or background noise. And the public is encouraged to submit questions online. We'll be monitoring comments and responding accordingly throughout the meeting. Questions and comments may be sent via the Q&A in Microsoft Teams or via email to surveycomments@lanabus.com. And again, for those of you in person, we'll answer questions in person at the end of this, but you don't need to rush online to post those. Comments on these proposals will be received through today. So please provide comments. If you think about something overnight and respond to us tomorrow morning, no worries, we'll receive comments as late as possible. But we are trying to finalize these changes before the holiday weekend so that we can make sure to incorporate as much as possible into the information before the holidays. Daryl, do you have anything you'd like to add to that?
If anyone wants to, when we get to the Q&A portion, if anyone wants to speak, you can, that's online, you can just raise your hand. We'll allow you to unmute to speak your comments or questions. There's no order of prioritization, it's just pretty much first come, first serve when we get to that portion.
Wonderful, thank you, Daryl. And that was Daryl Leitner, Manager of Communications and Strategic Initiatives. All right, tonight's agenda is pretty straightforward. We are going to begin with Your Voice Initiative and the annual service plan, talk about why schedules are changing again, discuss frequency versus span versus coverage and what that means, and then go through route by route and discuss the changes, and then we'll move on to the questions and answers portion. So the Your Voice Initiative. This is an initiative that was created by Daryl's department back in 2021. And essentially it's an initiative within Atlanta to make sure that we are receiving your feedback in whichever way we communicate. So whether you're here in person, online, if you submitted comments to drivers or wrote through survey comments in the last year, if you post to social media or you voice a complaint to anyone within our organization, we'll receive those comments, and we aren't weighing them any special way. We receive them all equally, so we just want to make sure that you don't have to feel like you're submitting it the incorrect way when we're not hearing you. We also are using your voice initiative to communicate that back to you in the way that you receive information most. So if at all through this process you're not receiving information, you can think of a platform that might be better to receive that information, reach out, let us know. We definitely want to make sure we're communicating with as many of you as possible, as frequently as possible. Part of that Your Voice initiative is the annual service plan. The annual service plan is an annual cycle that we establish to make sure that we have consistent points of contact with riders, to make sure that we're managing all your comments appropriately. It really begins in fall with the annual survey, September, October, and then planning takes all that feedback into the winter months, analyzes it, proposes changes, and then we have an annual meeting in spring where we propose major service changes for the summer, and then we implement those changes in June. We decided on this cycle for a couple reasons, to make sure that we are giving two clear points for rider feedback, an annual survey in fall, which we just completed on more buses and at transit centers, and then at the annual service meeting in spring. This also was done to prevent major service changes in winter. But here we are in winter discussing a major service change. So I wanted to go over why that's happening, but also express that our annual service plan is still moving forward. So even though we have this special meeting here to discuss service reductions in January, we still encourage you to look for communications on our annual meeting in spring and provide feedback, because we definitely still want to improve the system wherever possible as we move forward. So, why are schedules changing? Right now, we are right-sizing service levels to match projected funding. As Owen mentioned up front, LANTA is funded by federal, state, and local funding sources that subsidize operating costs. We are following a 2-year process that started in June of 2025 to adjust the overall service level on the LANTA bus system to be in line with projected feasible levels of funding over the coming years. The January changes, which represent a reduction of approximately 5%, are a continuation of that process. There will be additional modifications to service levels over the 2-year period. These modifications will result in an overall service level that we feel will be sustainable for moving forward. These changes are also in line with our efforts to meet our system productivity and performance targets established by PennDOT. So that's a lot of words to say. We need to right-size this, and we will be reassessing as we move forward. So again, I just want to stress how important it is to engage with us at all of those meetings moving forward, to make sure that as we navigate this path, we are including all of your comments and feedback here. So balancing service. In planning and scheduling, we're tasked with listening to you, riders and drivers, as much as possible, and allocating limited resources to meet the needs of as many riders as possible. So we always have to balance these three areas of planning: frequency, span, and coverage. Frequency is the wait time between buses, so how frequently your bus comes down the street. Span is the hours and days the bus is available, as well as the days of the week that it's available. And coverage is the distance to your nearest route or stop. So coverage determines how far out into the rural area you go, or whether we can deviate into a parking lot to serve a major destination. And if you improve one of these areas, it takes from another area in terms of funding. And so we always have to balance, if we want to increase the frequency on a bus, that might mean in our limited funding, we would need to decrease how late a bus runs in the evening, or maybe remove a portion of a route. And so we're always trying to balance that with every service change in planning. But this particular change focused on maintaining coverage and span across the Lehigh Valley. We wanted to make sure, because this is a winter change outside our usual cycle, there is nowhere losing a bus route or a bus stop. We are maintaining all of the lines on the map, all of the stops in the system. But what that means is the frequency is decreasing on a number of routes based on their performance. And so That's the task we took in planning to make sure that we were affecting as few people as possible. We made these cuts based on productivity, which means the number of riders on board each bus for each trip, and that's how we move forward with this service change. As always, if any of these service changes affect job access, please have your HR manager or your boss or the owner of your company, whoever is in charge of your scheduling at your company, reach out to Lanta. Lanta is able to offer additional assistance to employers in some circumstances. And this just kind of boils down to making sure that we have an agreement in place with your employer so that we can align your shift schedules with the bus schedules. Because it doesn't do anyone any good if we align a bus to your shift and then your shift changes and then that bus is empty. So please have your HR manager reach out to us. We'll have a conversation. The best way to have them reach out is all of our standard Lanta contacts. 888-253-8333 is that phone number that you see on the front of our bus schedule or on the buses. Or you can email surveycomments@lantabus.com. If they state they're with a company, we will reach back out and we'll have that conversation to see what we can do about maintaining that service. All right, let's go into the service changes. There are quite a few routes that are not seeing changes, and so if you are on one of these routes and concerned, there is no changes at all to these routes, not a change to the schedule, not a change to the bus stops, anything. So these are routes with no changes. Route 101, 102, 108, 210, 211, 214, 216, 217, 218, 319, 324, 325, 327, 501, 502, 506, 606, 701, 702, 703, the EBS blue line, and the EBS green line. All right. Then there is the routes with changes. We'll go into each of these, but as you can see, the majority of these routes, there are changes on weekdays and Saturdays. We'll go through each service type. And again, all of these, we will be displaying the current schedule, and anything marked in red is a trip that is being proposed for discontinuation based on low productivity. And anything you see in yellow is an adjustment to run times and trips, and we'll go over that. If you have any questions on any of these routes, save them for the end, put them in the chat. We can go back to these slides as we get to the end. So we'll start with Route 103. Route 103 on weekdays and Saturdays, we are proposing to discontinue every other trip after 6 p.m. So that brings the frequency to every 2 hours on weekdays and Saturdays, with the last trips remaining to and from Cherryville, Northampton Borough, and the Lehigh Valley International Airport. Oh, I'm sorry. There are no changes to Sunday schedule. The current Sunday schedule on the 103 remains the same. Route 105, on weekdays and Saturdays, the second to last trip to the Lehigh Valley Airport and the second to last trip to Hellertown are discontinued. It's a lower ridership trip that just brings a 2 hour span there for that last hour, but it maintains the last trip to and from Hellertown and to and from the airport. Again, that's weekdays and Saturdays. There are no changes to the Sunday schedule. The current Sunday schedule will remain the same. Oh, thank you. I skipped 104. Going back to 104, Route 104 is a straightforward change. The second to last trip to Emmaus is proposed for discontinuation. That's the 9:45 p.m. trip. That keeps the last trip to Emmaus intact, but the lower ridership trip is discontinued. I also should mention, I am saying lower ridership trip. It should be noted that we do have riders on the majority of these trips. And so I just want to stress that again, if your trip is being discontinued, take a look at the schedule. The most helpful comment is letting us know if we might be able to adjust the remaining trips here or there to see if we can fit your trip in. And then also, I just reiterate, if it affects your job access, have your HR manager reach out. Moving on to Route 106, this looks like a lot of red. but essentially it's all of the shorter trips between Easton Hospital and Forks Plaza. So we had a more frequent trip that was just in the Easton area. Those were added recently in June, and they are not showing the ridership we'd hoped for. So those are being discontinued. But the important thing to note here is what's not in red. All of the trips to Northampton Crossing, to Walmart, to Van Buren Loop, to the warehouse district up there in Palmer Township, all of those trips remain the same. No changes to schedules, no changes to their run times. So service north of Easton Hospital or west of Easton Hospital remains the same. This also removes the confusing dual head signs that we had in Easton. This was one of the comments we received after June. If you're standing on the platform in Easton Intermodal Transportation Center, there were signs that said Easton Hospital and signs that said Forks Plaza and signs that said Van Buren Loop, and they were going opposite directions. So this removes that confusion. We'll now just have Van Buren Loop and Forks Plaza for eastbound and westbound or northbound, southbound. This is a change on weekdays. There's also a change on Saturdays we will get to. Yep. So again, on Saturdays, there were none of those shorter trips. So none of those shorter trips were removed. But the last short trip back to Easton Hospital was removed at 10:50 p.m. for both those reasons, the head sign confusion as well as low ridership. And then there are no proposed changes on Sunday for Route 106. Route 107 on weekdays and Saturdays, we are proposing to discontinue the last trip toward Village West. It was the trip that ended at 16th or 17th and Gordon, the Lehigh Valley Hospital, the trip leaving Bethlehem Transportation Center at midnight. This is the last trip of the night, so that's important to be aware of, but it is showing lower ridership than the rest of the trips, and that's why it's being proposed for discontinuation. That is on weekdays and Saturdays. There are no changes to the Sunday schedule on the 107. The current schedule remains the same. Route 209, this is the first where you see this yellow. The yellow means times were adjusted. The red means trips that are proposed for cancellation. For Route 209 on weekdays and Saturdays, service after 9:30 p.m. is proposed to be discontinued. This service was recently added, but has not produced the ridership we'd hoped for. The last trip to L-Tri-C is also discontinued due to lower ridership. All remaining trips on weekdays and Saturdays were retimed to improve on-time performance. Service is now every 90 minutes from Southside Allentown to L-Tri-C. This retiming was done in response to feedback we received from both riders and drivers that there were some pretty serious runtime issues on this route. And everyone just kind of wanted a more accurate schedule. So this meets that. One other note I would like to add to this, at our Thursday meeting last week on the 19th, we received a request to add a 7 a.m. trip to L-Tri-C. And so we looked at our schedules here, and it does appear that we are able to extend that first trip up to L-Tri-C. So we are looking into that. That is not a confirmed change yet. But in addition to these proposed changes, just imagine that first schedule is filled in with another trip up to L-Tri-C. So getting to L-Tri-C just around 7:15-ish. So we will assess that. If you do not like that proposed change, please let us know. We will get you the final schedules after this. So again, we appreciate all your feedback. Everything helps. And we're hoping to get that additional trip to L-Tri-C there. Again, these changes are weekdays and Saturdays on Route 209. There are no changes to the Sunday schedule. The current Route 209 schedule on Sunday remains the same. Route 220, this is pretty straightforward. The last trip to Easton Intermodal Transportation Center is discontinued due to lower ridership. This is the trip leaving Bethlehem Transportation Center at 9:42 p.m. and arriving in Easton at 10:30 p.m. And that is on weekdays. There are no proposed changes to the Saturday schedule on the 220, and the 220 also has no Sunday service, so no changes there. Route 312. Late morning and early evening trips are proposed to be discontinued due to lower ridership. This leaves the early morning trips and the last trip to and from Bethlehem Square and Northampton Community College intact, as well as the midday service to Northampton Community College and Bethlehem Square. Yep. And the remaining trips remain the same. So there is no Saturday and Sunday service. This is only changing Route 312 on weekdays. Route 322, this is an interesting one. We had low ridership trips discontinued kind of all over the place on this one. All of these discontinuations were based on productivity metrics on these routes. So the first trip out at 4:15 in the morning, as well as back at 4:50 in the morning, is proposed for discontinuation. The 9:40 a.m. trip toward Briningsville and the 10:20 a.m. trip toward Cedar Point is proposed for discontinuation. The 1 p.m. trip to Briningsville and the 1:40 p.m. trip to Cedar Point is proposed for discontinuation. And the 6 p.m. trip to Briningsville and 6:40 p.m. trip back to Cedar Point is proposed for discontinuation on weekdays. That leaves various other trips throughout the day, 6 round trips. And then on Saturdays, the 4:12 a.m. trip to Briningsville, 6:42 a.m. trip to Briningsville, and 6:27 p.m. trip to Briningsville are proposed for discontinuation. And then back to Cedar Point, the 5:53 a.m. trip, 3:53 p.m. trip, and 5:23 p.m. trip back to Cedar Point are proposed for discontinuation. So again, this is an area that a lot of jobs are in. So I need to stress that again. If you are on one of these trips that is proposed for discontinuation, or if you didn't have service in this area and your employer might be able to offer some assistance for that, we encourage your employer to reach out, talk to us. We're very interested in aligning this schedule with the needs of employers in the Briningsville area. So just like to stress that there. And 322 also does not have Sunday service. Route 323. Route 323 has persistently low ridership and was under consideration for full discontinuation, but the remaining trips are funded by Penn State Lehigh Valley, so we appreciate their service, their support for that service. So trips to and from Center Valley remain at the hours of 7 a.m., 11 a.m., 5 p.m., and 9 p.m. to align with class schedules out there at Penn State Lehigh Valley. So again, we appreciate Penn State Lehigh Valley for the support on that service. That is on weekdays. There is no Saturday or Sunday service on Route 323. All right, Route 601, the downtown Bethlehem shuttle. Route 601 is being moved to Saturdays with service 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. every 15 minutes instead of every 12 minutes on weekdays. Fare-free service is scheduled to end January 26th as well. This is a route that connects with our new downtown Bethlehem stop. So that's worth mentioning. For those of you who are in downtown Bethlehem, the EBS stop was relocated further away from Bethlehem Transportation Center. And this is a route that circles downtown and can get you back to the other stop without the walk. So we've appreciated the support from the Bethlehem Parking Authority on this route for the last few years. And we're excited to be able to continue it on Saturdays moving forward. Route 605. On weekdays and Saturdays, the second to last trip is being proposed for discontinuation. Again, this was a lower ridership trip and it maintains the span for the route. So that 9 p.m. trip, the loop through Bethlehem and through Commerce Center Boulevard is proposed for discontinuation on weekdays and Saturdays. There are no proposed changes on Sundays. Route 613 on weekdays. Lower ridership trips were looked at for discontinuation. So the first 2 trips to Commercial Center and the first trip to Fogelsville are proposed for discontinuation. Service between 8 a.m. and 10 p.m. Is every 90 minutes, and service after 6 p.m. Shifted to every 90 minutes, with the remainder of the day remaining at 45-minute headways. So there are a few trips discontinued in the morning and 3 trips discontinued in the evening. Service to and from Low Hill Township, which is the Allentown Comprehensive Treatment Center, has been realigned with their new operating schedule. So there are 3 trips in the mornings on weekdays and new service on weekends that we'll get to in a second. So again, the schedule you're seeing here is for weekdays only on the 613. On Saturdays for Route 613, the headway has been reduced from every 45 minutes, from every hour to every 2 hours. So every other trip is proposed to be discontinued on Saturdays. And then again, we've added the service to Low Hill Township for the Allentown Comprehensive Treatment Center to align with their new treatment center hours at 6:42 in the morning, 9:22 in the morning, and then returning at 9:32 in the morning. And again, I'd like to stress this is another high employment area. Again, please have your HR managers reach out if any of these trips are being discontinued to your employer. Last, for 613 on Sundays, same as Saturdays, we're proposing to discontinue every other trip to bring this to a 2-hour headway. This is the same schedule as on Saturdays, except it ends at 8 p.m. instead of 10 p.m. So you'll be able to see that pretty easily on the schedules. Again, the ridership was lower on these trips, and so every other trip is discontinued. But we understand that with 2-hour headways, it might not align with the shift schedule at your employer. So again, please reach out if any of these are not aligning with your shift schedule, and please provide any contacts for your employers so that we can do everything we can to make sure that your schedules align out there in Briningsville. And that concludes our list of proposed service reductions for January 29th, 2026. We're going to move on to the question and answer portion. So again, if you haven't already, submit any questions online, and we'll provide some feedback. So I think we're going to begin with online questions we've received.
Yes. So the first question we got was what happened to the 217 route?
Okay, the question was what happened to Route 217, which is the route to the Slate Belt. There are no proposed changes, so that is remaining the same as the current schedule.
And then our questions that were sent in ahead of time. Are local councils involved with approving or inputting on local transportation stops and schedules?
The question was, are local councils involved in approving decisions related to stops or schedules? I'm going to expand that to include all municipalities, community groups. Lance's planning department works really hard to work with all of our municipalities and have open conversations on where service and development are servicing in those municipalities. Well, we don't have direct like an approval process with the municipality. We definitely want to make sure that we are aligning our service with their planning departments and their needs. So we do maintain regular communications with almost all municipalities and community councils, and we work to align with the neighborhood needs. So that's kind of a comment on making sure you're reaching out both here and to your local municipalities and councils to request service, because it definitely helps us align our planning from both sides.
The next question is why have the routes been shortened?
The question is why have the routes been shortened? We didn't shorten any line, but I think that question gets to the removal of some trips and schedules and discontinuation of some service. And that gets back to the funding situation that we've been talking about. We needed to realign our service with the current funding landscape, and that's why we had to propose some discontinuations here.
And then we've had several questions about the 103, asking why the 6:08 p.m. time is being cut.
Back to the 103 here. Okay. Yeah, so that question was why is the 6:08 p.m. trip cut, and I also saw another question referencing the 7:08 p.m. trip. Both of those trips are higher ridership rush hour trips, and so that kind of gets back to what we were saying. They're not no ridership trips. There are definitely riders on these trips. Unfortunately, we had to make a decision on which one to cut, and the 6:08 p.m. trip, even though it is a busier trip, does have slightly lower ridership and productivity, and we also wanted to ensure that people still had a way to get home to Northampton Borough, to Catasauqua, to the entire Whitehall area. We understand that a lot of these changes will increase some of your commute times, and so we just want to make sure that there's still a way to get home at the end of the night. That's why a lot of these changes focused on maintaining that last trip or maintaining a flatter trip during rush hour. So ultimately, the decision was made to keep the 7:08 p.m. trip instead of the 6:08 p.m. trip to make sure that everyone is able to get home.
And then the final one online is, does Atlanta have a cutoff between afternoon rush hour and evening service?
Does Atlanta have a cutoff between afternoon rush hour and evening service? There is not an official line that we draw. We make decisions on when we would decrease the frequency based on what we're seeing in productivity or ridership. So it's different for every route. It's different based on where we are in the region and where commute patterns are. So there is no official cutoff line that we aim to there. That's it for online questions?
For online, that's all the questions.
All right, we'll move to some in-person questions. Any questions or comments?
Yeah, I have several. So the funding thing, so recently Philly got their money. Is it just a matter, and the governor said that Philly got their money for their step of the funding? Is it just a matter of the governor trying to push things forward in his office, or is it, what are the parameters about how you guys do your funding? Because a lot of drivers, as well as riders, have been asking me, what do I know about funding? Are we legally getting it? Even drivers are your own employees are asking me, did you know, did you give a heads up, did we get our funding yet? And they want to know. I said, I don't know, I would assume Pittsburgh's the second biggest market, now it's only about the third biggest market in the state. I know Philly, the governor insisted they finally got accepted the contract, they got their funding. It wasn't a guy, so someone wanted, but they got the money.
So from I'm director of planning and scheduling, I can't comment on the funding situation. I can only comment on how the service is delivered, but we do have our executive director here, who would like to make some comment.
Yeah, and I would say that a lot of these are, we do have a request in PennDOT now, and we're kind of waiting to hear back on that. These changes, we would put together, we would move forward with, regardless of even if we do kind of anticipate we're going to get some level of funding from PennDOT. Yeah, so even with this, we've kind of factored that in, because anything we do get, just like SEPTA, just like what happened with SEPTA, is going to be kind of short term. It's going to be 1 year, 2 year at the most. So we still have to kind of be thinking about what positioning ourselves better for when and if we know what the long term is going to look like. But right now, we kind of have to kind of position ourselves to just kind of be prepared for whatever is going to happen.
And that's really anything with the government shutdown doesn't affect anything.
Yeah.
So my other, I'm finished with that, my questioning. Other question was right for mitigation. So back to the 613. So ever since the June 30th changes, you had, so everybody knows the normal window for most factories, warehouse plants, Bryanville, Boltonville. First shift 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. Second shift 3 to 11 p.m. And third shift 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. Well, an issue with a lot of people that work Sharp, FedEx, Amazon, Dr. Pepper, Keurig, CPS cards, etc. Have had an issue with getting home because we're second shift workers, we're punching out at 11 p.m. The last physical bus to get out of here is the 6:13. It comes by Penn Drive, scheduled at 10:48. And it's kind of, a lot of the drivers have been saying to me, a lot of the workers that are trying to get home, and we're straight up at 5 in the morning with the first 13 at 4:13 a.m. A lot of the drivers say, did they ever get that, the driver just spent only 5 minutes of a reason. Did they get that 2 or any late bus back for you? Because you're being stranded and for like 5 hours, it's crazy. And some of the drivers are suggesting the last few months, is there a way they can just not have the last couple 322s, 613s, like get rid of them, like come down skipping every 2 hours every hour. Cut down maybe to 9 p.m., 10 p.m., 6:13, but have that 11:30 p.m., 6:13, and then we're to 11:24 p.m. to 18. We're now between 11 p.m. and midnight, but you're punching out 11. Like, and then it's going to go to Dr. Pepper at like 10:55. And it ends on 10:58, so you're punching out basically, and all the riders and a lot of many passengers and drivers have been saying to me in the last 2 weeks, everybody knows, no offense to you guys, everybody knows a common theme in this country, everybody knows Secretary 311 is the window. And I asked my boss, he's like, unfortunately, you know, we can't punch out before 11 p.m. All the other drivers that were on the 218, those last 2 weeks, I was going to have something prepared. Like, what do you mean? They were stunned. And they were like, well, I'm not punching out before 11 p.m. So we're trying to figure out why, like he said earlier, you mentioned some of the factors, and it would be nice to, like, you could have like a few hour lull from like 8 p.m. to 11, between 11 p.m. and midnight. Everybody knows Secretary is 3 to 11. Like, everybody knows Briansville closed, Amazon, FedEx season, Amazon season, Shark season, Dr. Pepper cured with all the soda and water, Niagara water, and Briansville closed with a major employee situation. And some of those buyers have been asking me, can you start the petition? I'm like, wow, I'm a busy man. I would love to, but it's like, in my opinion, the number one warehouse factory plant area in downtown. In my opinion, Briansville focused on. When you talk about the Nestle water pure part, Dr. Pepper, Amazon, and FedEx, Sharp. When you go to Walgreens, Walmart, McDonald's, come from my building 1, my 3 buildings are Sharp. So I would love to see it. Whether we'll take the 326, 613, any visible bus going to be here between 11 p.m. and 1 a.m. So we can physically, poor security guards who work at FedEx, he's like, this is crazy. I get out at midnight, I said, I got 11. So if there was a 218 or 326 security guard even 11:15, I'd be clear. But I don't know if they're going at midnight. Now the 218 was 11:24 p.m. We were good. I punched at 11, and all my coworkers were there from Sharp, Dr. Pepper, and all that whole ride. We were waiting here ahead from 11 to 11:24. It's good. A good time point. Go ahead. I was just interested in if there's a way you could just get rid of some of those and negate that, just have one major bus to 11 p.m. and 1 a.m. People would have their families not having to leave their jobs. So I appreciate any input put on.
No, I appreciate that, and just out of respect for the people who are online, I have to repeat stuff. So we're trying to limit it to 3 minutes, but generally the comment is regarding our shift times in the Briansville area and aligning our schedule out there with the 11 p.m. shift change, as well as the 7 a.m. shift change to meet that second and third shift in Briansville. That's a very good comment. I know we've chatted out there on the platforms before about this, and it's definitely something that we would like to make happen. This is again gets back to where I need some input from those employers to match those shifts. So we hear that. I definitely need some more employer engagement in the area. So anything we can do to have those HR managers reach out would really help make this happen. That said, there is a very clear request here for that 11 p.m. trip. So we can look at if there's a way we can juggle some of these around. One thing to mention here, because of this current funding situation, the only way we can add a trip there is to remove the trips somewhere else. So if we're able to fit that into the schedule, it would likely come at the expense of a midday trip. So we will look at potentially places to pull from there, and we'll try and see what we can do to fit that in the schedule.
It's not to give you guys you look at good riders. I can't tell you how many people said I just thought about between 11 and midnight. And you would have that tax loss, in my opinion. All the feedback I get, I ride.
The other comment I would make, this is probably not a comment you want to hear, but we do share concerns about job access in these areas. That's what we've mentioned a few times. One of the things that we wanted to make sure we maintained is that access on the blue line from Trexlertown. I know that does not go directly to the warehouses, but it does provide a nearby service that operates close to midnight hour for potentially car sharing, ride sharing with some coworkers, or it would decrease like an Uber trip or a taxi trip to Trexlertown versus all of it at Allentown to make that commute a little more palatable. I know that is not the optimal solution, so we definitely look at adding that trip. But just a reminder that the Blue Line is still down there nearby.
Excellent point. I will say, the way, and I'm glad that's not big, new drivers as well as riders mentioned, why is there, after the last 14 p.m. Blue Line going eastbound, you have a 12:39 a.m. Hayes, a 1:39 a.m. Hayes, and you have two buses. They said you guys, man, more about people coming to downtown, but the people are getting stranded after 11:14 p.m. You gotta go from the warehouse back to the plants and drive to Postville. So once you miss that Blue Line at 11:14 p.m. Giant, you're done. Whereas after 11:14 p.m. Giant, you got the 11:39 a.m. Brentboro, 12:39 a.m. Brentboro, 1:39 a.m. Brentboro. I mean, the 1:39 a.m. schedule will be ATC at Titanic. Last run is Muhlenberg College. And then take the full trip to Trexlertown Giant, just the last Blue Line. Okay. And then similar to the only go fair because it doesn't go to Silvertown Giant. But they were just interested in that.
Yeah, sorry to reiterate that for those online. What I heard is a comment on the Blue Line maybe incorporating some of our what we call deadhead trips, where the bus goes out to Trexlertown and then goes straight back to the garage. Instead, maybe having that run revenue service to Allentown. Is that kind of what
You're talking about downtown college. You'll see 11:39 p.m. Trexlertown Giant, 12:39 Giant, 1:39 they're getting on 78 on 71 of Leon Street. How unproductive a lot of drivers have been saying, how will have them going just to ATC and like some of your runs for a day, now you're out of service. You just got from Trexlertown Giant all the way. Most people are living between 4th Street and 17th Street. That's where people are losing their minds too. It's very unproductive. Can't hit from ATC, right downtown. How convenient. Kill two birds with one stone.
No, comment definitely received, and we'll look to see if that's something that we can maybe incorporate. There is a difference between revenue service and deadhead service in terms of funding, and again, we're up against this funding situation. But I can definitely look to see if that's something that we can incorporate. If not now, potentially in a future service change. And that's an important thing to note. We receive all these comments, and one of the things we have in planning is, there's some good comments that we just can't make happen at one service change, but we can make, do some adjustments to make it happen in the future. So that comment is definitely well received, and it is a very good idea. It's just I need to check to make sure the numbers work out. So we'll see what we can do about both of those suggestions: the 6:13 at the 11 o'clock hour, as well as potentially running some partial Blue Line trips back to Allentown.
I appreciate that. A lot of drivers saying the last month to say everybody's taking the last legal Walmart turn. I said it's like 8 o'clock. I was trying to tell them there is no more. The last one is 7:14 p.m. Walmart. And I said luckily it doesn't apply on Sundays, but he said some people play games and the drivers are don't say you're waiting here for the blue line because it's gone. But that's small my issues are done with. I have small issues now, and that is you're probably going to already look into this. The South Mall 104 all the construction for the paving and the parking lots. Are you going to get that from the back of the South Mall back to the front of the South Mall? And are you going to do two park? Are you going to do a white wall giant, Trexlertown giant? You have a 6:13 and stop right in front of giant. So is it going to go back to just the South Mall stop, or is it South Mall drive? I got to go past South Mall and 30 more feet, stopping in front of the giant for a person with a walk or a cane.
Sure, yeah. We're definitely veering outside of the topic of this meeting, but that's okay. I just want to make sure before I answer that question, to respect the people online, are there any more questions? And were there any other questions in the room for right now? Okay. So the question was about South Mall. It has been a lot of construction last year, and that's the new giant opened on Thursday.
Great open 8 a.m. Friday.
Friday. It's open now.
Everything is on the paving
A lot of fuss, a lot of commotion, a lot of whatever.
So the question is, will the stop move from the back of the mall back to the front of the mall, or will it move to in front of the giant? At this point, again, that's private property, so we can't we need to communicate with private property to get an agreement for us to do that. We have agreement that the other Giants, so far this is a brand new Giant, we haven't been able to speak to management to allow that, but South Mall management has showed encouragement in maintaining the stop in the back, which is actually kind of useful, as well as adding a new stop closer to like the Taco Bell area on the other side of the parking lot. Yeah. And so I know that construction is not complete there, and there is interest in building an additional platform out there so that there's more access to the property throughout. So,
the construction part that is finished this weekend, it's just co-houses already, it's connected.
the Giant's completed, but there's like the parking lot and stuff is still.
And that plus up 4173 over down, that's the back of South Mall, it was one of the Yaakos, and got removed the back, so.
Yeah.
We were just wondering if it's coming back to the front.
I do not believe the stop's going back to the entrance of the front, but we were looking to maintain that back entrance and then out in the Burlington area.
Like where you first come in and then there'll be like,
And you're around to the paper still on the front, the old house says, this bus stop will be relocated to the back of South Mall, so eventually your ground team will have to be on top of that and take that.
Right.
Remove that paper, it's still there.
And again, even though the Giant's open, there's still work being done there. So for the near foreseeable future, likely through the holiday season, the current stops are going to remain, and we'll make an announcement if anything changes. Yep. Yes.
Yeah, it's kind of unusual, but I mean, it's the changing from the front to the back. It's not a bad idea. Because,
Well, he said that you might be too.
I think it's all like 20, I'm like, yeah, I mean, it's, you don't have to go all the way back, but there's a little bit of space that you can decide, you don't get so.
Yep. Yep, and so the comment for those on the line, that stop to the back of South Mall is not necessarily the worst stop, and we agree. That was a conversation that we had with mall management, reconstruction. And so we'd like to keep that. The issue with that stop is when the mall closes, you have to walk all the way around to get to the front. So that's why we're still working toward a stop in the front for both.
And now we'll go to
Now you give him a chance, I think JJ got the point. Now you got extra people with a walker or cane, can't walk to get their groceries back and forth.
Yeah, it's nice during the day, you can walk right through the mall.
For us, it's easy, we have good days, we can walk in and it's like, and then an hour.
Yep.
So, excuse me, I mean, yes, is Giant gonna close in again?
Yeah, they closed up around, let me give them in there, no problem, it's one of those times, this point was at the point, it was on the mall at 9 p.m.
Yeah,
Just 2 hours.
Giant was closed just towards.
Used to be 24/7.
Thank you.
Yeah, not no more. COVID, that took that away from Walmart China.
I don't know. So we'll talk to mall. We'll talk to them.
I don't know, at least till 10 p.m., as far as I know.
Well, I told this guy in Walmart, where they said, COVID took that away, it's not worthwhile for us to be open at 3 in the morning, they work 24/7. Now, that meant to shop, that's unproductive. I actually have one more minor question, and maybe this is something when we talk about Euro elsewhere. There's a bus, normally there's a bus stop on the opposite side, normally any run, Blue Arc number bus, whether it's Blue Green or number bus, normally a bus stop. If there's one on one side of the street, there should be one normally. Each can't look at the exact point, but give or take, we're looking at servicing the other side of the ground. Now, I don't know if you guys missed this when you started that new 613 a few years ago. There's a bus stop that I wrote down on 69 and 85. So it's an intersection at Tillman Street and Route 100 in Boglesville. There's my bank that I like to go to every for reverse Commonwealth. You have Marvel's long jumps over the Cracker Barrel, down those. I make sure it's right for the Weiss Boglesville. The 613 goes by there, 218 goes by there. The 218 has to stop on both sides. But what's very dangerous and unsafe, and a lot of drivers and riders, especially drivers, you need something that's dangerous. There's not a stop on the other side. So to go back to Penn Drive, you gotta walk all the way up 100 south of Burger King, and you're walking in front of the ramps. You're walking in front of the ramps. And we just saw it this weekend, and the driver said, yes, I'm insane. I'm trying to bring in front of a 2027 ramp on both sides here. And there's a light there. He's like, that's by the way, I have my walking from the intersection at 100 all the way down to Burger King. I'll take that 6 now to go to Penn Drive and Carpenter and Dr. Pepper and Sharp by Yakos. He's like, and then if you did the opposite, then you're right. You have to go all the way over 100 north to Weiss. And I couldn't believe how long it took me. It's like several blocks because you're going up Route 100 and there's a lot of townhouses and single homes and a development there by the time you get to Weiss. So you're literally, and drivers and riders, especially drivers, like you need to tell them this is dangerous. And especially at the nighttime, you're walking up Route 100 north to go to Weiss from the Route 100 and Silver Street bus stop, 613, as well as Hurricane, you're walking in front of you 78 22 ramps. So for whatever reason they missed that, and the driver said that they didn't put it right where the riding is here, because there's a street, there's a traffic light here. Normally you guys like to have your stops at a traffic light, what? Right before the light or right after the light? And there's not either a stop. I said it would be the perfect for crossing the credit union in front of the traffic light, right before the light, before you have the red light, which is normal. I've seen that all day on my blue line. But the driver's like, I think it would even better right after the light. There's a whole side, there were a whole, a nice little bus lane, right, literally in front of Arby's there. Right after the light, 20 after the light, you would be coming here for you guys to put it in. It's interested here, it's like I said, bus stop number 6985, it's starting to be dangerous.
I know, right, we were talking about. So again, for those online, we're talking about stop pairings is the comment, and how you usually have a stop going both directions so that when you get off the bus, at the end of the day, you just cross the street to go back. We're referencing a stop up there at Pennsylvania 100 and Oldsville Road. Right where I-78 and 22 meet this whole area. There is a stop where the 613 to Boglesville Weiss turns and stops to meet up with the 218, but there's not a return trip. You know exactly what you're talking about. We have looked at a stop going the opposite direction. It's unsafe to walk under those underpasses. It's also unsafe to walk to most of the stop locations, but I know exactly what you're talking about. There's interest in adding a stop on the island near the side of the intersection. There's a large slip road island. We've definitely looked at that. But on that island that we're working on, we need to go through appropriate approvals to put a stop there and to make sure that you can stand on the islands. There is some safety concerns with standing there. And then additionally, the far side location closer to Cracker Barrel that you're talking about, closer to Arby's, that location is kind of in and on ramp for I-78. So there is not an ADA accessible access ramp to either of those locations at this point. So we can't place a new stop unless a wheelchair user is able to safely get to that stop. So both those locations don't meet that burden at this point. But we are definitely aware of it. We've spoken up with Kenji about it. We've spoken to PennDOT about it. And we were interested in doing that. In the interim, the reason the 613 turns right to serve that stop over at Windsor Drive is to connect with the 218, and we prefer that connection to be up at Boglesville Weiss. So if you're on the 218 trying to connect to 613, we encourage people to ride two more stops to the Boglesville Weiss to transfer that 613. And it's also the reason the 613 is usually designed as a loop, so that you can board at that stop and ride back around without having to walk under the freeways. That's the way it's currently set up with that safety in mind. We definitely do not encourage you to walk under the freeway down to Taco Bell to get there. The difficult thing in that area is there's lots of jersey barriers and one-way streets. So while we do like to have a stop pairing across the street everywhere, in an area like that, it's not as simple as just putting them on either side of that jersey barrier, because you can't just walk across that jersey barrier. So definitely hear you. It's on our radar. That's one of those things where it's a concern that has been on our minds for a couple of years, and it will take some construction work to make happen. But absolutely.
I would leave some from around there to chop back there and cross here. This is awesome.
Yep.
They even got the button. Press stuff. Press the button and walk across. I appreciate that. I will say one more thing about that is about the island stuff that's on the same thing, ramps, 178, 22. In front of the property is nice, it's a more safer, there's a lane right, so no, I might look at that too.
The stop near side is definitely my preferred location, but I'm not the only person.
You're more agree with you.
I have stood on that island personally and said, I would love it to stop here. So I know exactly what you're
Whether
talking
it's the island or right down on next to that, like the Friday grass or the sidewalk.
There's also a dual slip road halfway up that I looked at, so I hear you.
Both of you agree that it's better driver stuff with the one out like front of our
This is a perfect example example of how we have to balance a lot of different needs. But thank you for bringing up all of these to make sure that they stay within our planning minds, and we'll keep trying to advocate for the riders as much as we can. So thank you for that. We are up against the 6 o'clock hour. I just want to be respectful of everyone's time. Are there any more questions in person, online? Okay, I'm happy to stay after and chat more if you'd like, but I think we're going to draw this meeting to a close. Owen, do you have anything like to add? All right.
Thanks again for everybody.
Thank you, everyone, for joining. Again, we're accepting comments through tonight, so any additional comments that you think about, go to surveycomments@atlantabus.com, send an email there, provide as much feedback as you can. We will get you the list of the final plan changes for January by the end of November. So it's a pretty tight turnaround. If anybody is struggling to see the schedules, all these slides are posted online on the meeting page. So go ahead and review those. Reach out if you can't find them. And please provide feedback. But thank you again, everyone who's attended both meetings. And thank you for all of the feedback. So.
And for anybody that's attending online, we did include the link for the PowerPoint that we're showing in the chat and in the Q&A, so you can just click that and download it if you ever want to review. But we are, like AJ said, we are accepting comments until the end of the day. So, thanks for attending.
Thanks.
That's it?
That's it.
So.
Let's go to it. I appreciate you guys.
Yeah.
Pretty good. How are you?
It's great. You're the one that loves driving
I guess the reason that I'm here is because,
he has an accent that says,
it's a little bit of a
well, what do you mean? It's pretty clean.
fresh
Get out.
brush
Second,
of whatever.
we're going to let that now, 11:24 p.m. You can't get out that one more. I don't know how much traffic on 441.
That's the reason that I'm here.
Excuse me, I said it is what it is, man. He goes to me.
Put in a little
Another
extra
time,
brush
3
of
p.m.
whatever.
So Robert,
This is a refresher.
he wasn't trying to disrespect you guys. Man, Why? Everybody knows. First, like I said, at my 7 number